Hit him with that motherfucking... Every now and then, I hear the idea tossed around that video games aren't as fun as they used to be. People throw out a lot of different answers, and when it comes to such a subjective topic, I suppose no one is entirely incorrect. Just like everyone has their own favorite genre of video games, people have their own reasons for falling out of love with video games. Like with any hobby, I assume it's fairly typical to have periods of hyper-interest juxtaposed with periods of disinterest, but for basement-dwelling gremlins known as gamers, it's such a habit that not playing video games is such a departure from the norm that it feels like the end of the world. It's not a hobby, but instead has elevated itself into a lifestyle, so when things feel off, it's not just being bored of your hobby, but a complete disinterest and detachment in your life that leads one into spiraling into theory after theory to figure out why games just aren't as great as they used to be. Now that I've thoroughly minimized the issue and attacked my target audience, I'd say it's time to take a stab at the subject and throw my immensely valuable opinion into the ring. One thing I'd like to go over is the idea that the game industry as a whole has simply gotten worse. Although I don't believe this is entirely true, I think one word encapsulates the possible reason for this feeling very well: disillusionment. Growing up, I'm assuming you had the same mystical feeling about the game industry that I did, just brimming with sweaty yet passionate nerds who lived and died by coding and crafting levels in your favorite video games. Without a peek behind the curtains, it was easy to believe that any and every game was a passion project. Now that we've grown older, I think it's become easier for us to see the cracks in the public image of most development companies. Public scandal after public scandal where companies you've loved for years have been outed for overworking developers, discriminating against employees, and harassing their workers in more ways than one. Rushed projects that not only break your immersion within the game, but the immersive image you had built up in your mind about the people who crafted these games. And finally, the easiest to see, the greedy business practices of the industry's largest developers. Loot boxes, pay-to-win mechanics, in-game advertisements, cash shops, and any other form of microtransaction you can conjure. I don't think it's any wonder that players have fallen out of love with the industry. Somewhere along in the whole process, the game stopped becoming the product and instead became a tool for companies to extract money from their real product, their customers.
Who's that? That's you!
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with making money. Businesses are businesses, and in order to keep a business running, you need money. But I think it becomes a problem when the business is actively working to exploit its customers' bad habits and dishonestly advertising a product to get money from consumers. And maybe this wouldn't be so bad if at least our developers who are working so hard to deliver these games we loved were being paid and treated well, but like we've talked about before, that's far from the case. I could divulge into a tangent about how the games industry has frequently pushed out repetitive releases, with some games being almost identical to each other outside of minor alterations, but I say that's not entirely uncommon. Every medium of entertainment has followed the same trend-chasing pattern. Just because we're more aware of it now as adults doesn't mean this is some brand new issue. In fact, genres as a whole are built by commonalities between projects in an area of entertainment. But in the games industry, I'd say people aren't tired of whole genres of games being produced, at least not in the long term, but instead of things such as annual release cycles, unimaginative sequels, or quite plainly just a lack of innovation in the industry as a whole. Back in the old days of gaming, I'd say it was a lot harder to see this blatant trend chasing in video games, but in retrospect, I'd say a lot of video games were essentially just stealing ideas from one another. Not inherently a bad thing, but when done to a lazy degree, in what some might argue the modern games industry is normalized, it leads to widespread homogenization of not only a genre within gaming, but the industry as a whole. There are, of course, amazing games still being produced, games that continue to astound audiences visually and by their sheer scale, but some may argue that games have essentially become a mile wide but an inch deep. But I think those same people may have also forgotten how rudimentary games, especially in the arcade era, used to be. Over time, I feel that the real behemoths of the industry have set an almost unreachable precedent for others in the industry as well as themselves later down the road. Maybe it's not the games that have gotten worse, but that releases have grown more disappointing now that we've seen what studios can truly accomplish. But what if it's us? You've likely posed this question to yourself at some point now. Well, maybe it's me that's changed. Back when I was only 3 years old, I was outcast society and became a gamer when my dad would visit and faithfully buy me a PSP with Ape Escape on it. Funnily enough, the PSP didn't have a memory stick for whatever reason, meaning that I was essentially given no other option that would play the first level over and over again because I was too dumb at the time to think of a better solution. But you know what? I loved it. I played that game to death, and I mean this literally as my cousin stole the cartridge from me and snapped it in half in front of my very eyes. Childhood trauma aside, I bring this up to demonstrate the joy of novelty. Naturally, as I grew older, it took a lot more for me to enjoy a singular game as much as I enjoyed only one level on Ape Escape. And you know what? That's okay. That's natural. Novelty is something that always wears off. Yeah, driving for the first time after getting your license is something exhilarating, but after the first year, it becomes quite mundane. Outside of novelty, I think it's safe to say that none of us are as young as we used to be. Times change, friends change, games change, and most importantly, people change. Although it's easy to look back on those good times and feel sad about the fact those days might be gone, I also think it's important to remember the good times are still yet to come. Just because the past was amazing doesn't mean the present and future can't be great as well. Just like everything in life, there can be dull moments, moments of boredom, and in some cases sadness. But you know what? That's just life for you. This might sound like complete heresy speaking to what I'm assuming are a bunch of introverted merged with their $200 gaming chair neckbeards, but take a chance and try to be social. Go out and make some friends, join Discords, enter local tournaments, join in-game voice chat.
Oh, fuck you, faggot.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
Maybe not that one. Happiness is right around the corner if you know where to look. Best of luck, idiots, and keep your head up. Take care.